Okay, so here we are. We're in Sonoma Hub on April 22nd. The usual gang.
Earth
Mhm.
Day.
Yes, that's right.
It is Earth Day, so this
Yeah.
is what we're doing for Earth Day.
Well, Anna and I are going to be at our local carbon conversation practicing skills of grassroots organizing this evening for Earth Day.
Hmm. Great.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to some. I'm going to be doing a little presentation around the bioregional project, uh, the Learning Center, and I'm looking forward to any ideas you have about the best way to present that quickly and simply, because we only have a few minutes to do it, and uh, I'm still thinking about it.
Hmm.
Well, it's perfect we have this meeting because I had kind of an, like I mentioned to you, Anna, the other day, I was reading an Upside Down and I had an aha moment of switching gears right now
Mhm.
with our bioregional things because we've kind of hit this wall of outreach, getting people to want to host us for a field trip so we can learn about them and saying they have the bandwidth to meet with us in some sort of um, bioregional meetup, even if it's small to start. So when I was listening to the first day of Joe's bioregional organizing, and he was talking about creating immersions. And I always thought it was the big full-blown thing, like he had it by Achara or they had in Cascadia and other places. And that was just one way to design an immersion. But then I made notes on all the other things that he was rattling off. And it's like half of them we do here, and so do other people. But at least half of them I've been involved in organizing and carrying out personally. So then I started, and I'm also taking that mapping class, which I don't know where that's going to go, but I, I, my idea was, Anna, instead of trying to hit our heads on the wall, getting people to meet right now, let's flip that and be more like the journalist and tell the stories of what's going on already. And in that way, try to weave together our area and um, that could even be used for mapping in a way, because mapping is supposed to be creative, not just a map as we used to think of it. So you're a good writer, and we already have knowledge of quite a few immersions, so to speak, and things happening in our community. So to turn it into some stories, and then maybe that would be a start of a blog post and a website and using social media to put that out there. I could write about everything that's going on at the Sebastopol Grange and how that is uh, a precursor to bioregional organizing in a super hyper local, making a structure there.
Mhm.
And you would need something catchy to call it, like healing stories from our bioregion or something really positive. I just jotted that down as a first
Our
thing.
bioregional community, because there's two sides. It's what's lacking is the and not totally, because it is all interconnected, but that feeling that we are able to circle around and support each other.
And
I
and
think,
getting
yeah,
that through telling stories of situations and individuals and groups that are having success with doing something restorative. And especially that would be positive with everything being so negative out there in the world right now.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I
do,
liked your metaphor of weaving. My wife has been a hand weaver for the last 35, 40 years. And so those metaphors are strong in my head. I know there's other groups like out of the Aspen Institute doing Weave the People on a different level, not necessarily regenerative, but definitely community oriented, connecting people vertically. And a lot of us are already doing that. And so I sort of see the hubs as being exactly what you're pointing to, Dina, is we've got a lot of environmental groups here. I just went to the Soil Hub gathering a couple of weeks ago at a local winery, and there was 40, 45 people there, mostly growers and their consultants and their marketplace, as well as students and small businesses, all working to build healthy soil in the wine industry and to make the wine industry more regenerative, which is the dominant ag industry here. But we also have a lot of forests. There was a great film last week, a documentary on called Secrets of the Forest on Nova. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see that, but it was really great. And of course, it's streaming now, and all the biologists that were and they were talking about using the global forest for carbon capture. And what one of the scientists found out the hard way is that we can't just be planting monoculture. We got to have diversity of forests. And then and that we actually, according to their data, and they have global databases down to the plot of land where people are managing all the forests globally.
right,
So it's a huge database, and we could access that in terms of the mapping that you're talking about. We have to have the data. We got to know who the properties are and who manages those properties. Is it the owners or professional managers or farmers or landscapes? I'm looking at replacing fertilizers, chemical fertilizers with biological fertilizers in the whole turf grass industry throughout California. Now, obviously, we're already doing it here in Sonoma County in that one specific industry. But I think the hub is really about how do we weave together all the
how do
groups
we
that
weave
we're
it
already
together?
doing.
And what
We're
are
already
our local people who, for example, the forests, we've got somebody who will join us
right.
in Maya Khosla, who is making films herself and,
Mhm.
has been the main, and Jenny, do you know Jenny Blakely? Who's a very
I don't.
strong activist.
I was introduced to Tamara recently. She's with the forest group here locally and working with over at Duncan's Mills in the new, converting that mill into sustainable forest management production for
Yeah.
non-dimensional lumber.
And how much, Dina, and what do you think about the moment we're in where Trump is saying we're going to have full-on logging again? I mean, we've got an enormous the EPA that was the result of the first Earth Day.
Mhm.
The EPA was created 4 months after the first Earth Day, when
Right.
21 million people turned out. I was there. I'm old enough to remember that first Earth Day. And and then we got the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act from the EPA. Quite a way. Before that, I was in Philadelphia teaching, and I saw the river on fire.
Hmm.
So everything that we've done during my life that's in the right direction is being threatened and up for grabs at the moment. Now, how do we coalesce in the short term? Because long-term climate change is going to take the system down. So I've just been listening at that level, forgive me, but I don't know how much to bring our current. A lot of energy is still going to changing the system. And I think rather than organizing locally to build local resilience and independence from the system. And the one thing that the regenerative movement through BioFi and through Novo Foundation is that there are other ways of supporting things financially. That's a big piece of what Joe's doing at this point. And I don't know how much, I don't know if we turn there at all. But when I talk to people, what they're concerned about is losing their grants. This was the main thing that came up, you know, through CAF and through any of the organizations that are depending on federal funding at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm part of the finance lab too with the design school, so I'm learning a lot. And I've been involved in environmental finance my entire
Right.
career.
So how much should I mention?
In terms of your presentation, yeah, but the finance needs to be local. I think we've inadvertently become very dependent on, you know, the federal money. I applied for a $17 million grant last year, and the whole and out of the IRA, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, you know, which was a $2 billion act, and we were applying for 17 million for California, 2 counties in California, Butte and LA, but because our counties are not disadvantaged, and those were only disadvantaged communities could apply for that. So, but I think to me, the whole finance and the whole point of the design school of, you know, regenerative development is local economics. So how do we make our local economics support everybody? Now, Sonoma County, we have the highest value industry, ag industry here, which is the wine industry, but it's now hurting because younger people aren't drinking enough wine, at least according to Derek Trowbridge and
Right.
other growers and vintners that and that, you know, that was part of that workshop.
And they've also
They've overplanted, which is what happened to the almond industry.
Sure.
So far, it hasn't happened to the tomato industry but tomatoes are relatively low value. We get a lot of our tomatoes from Mexico, so as well as avocados. So if you're just looking at the ag industry, that's an important piece. And whether it's CAF, you know, the family farmers, or whether it's the Farm Bureau, I track them. They're more into the subsidies from the federal government because that whole industry is heavily subsidized too. And then there's a lot of people who are into property in that. And of course, there's the land trusts, which is what I was talking about with Joe at the last design meeting.
So, Dina, how would you frame this? By the way, how much time do I have, and are you going to come up with me?
Well, at the beginning, when Tor and I were organizing this, hardly anybody was presenting a project. So I wrote up my project at the Grange. So I already have something, but what you and I are doing overlaps. And then somebody else a few days ago submitted a project that overlaps because it's all about food security. So basically, we're going to have dinner together, and then we're all going to get that. All of us that have a project have a few minutes to share and go to a table, and anybody that didn't bring a project will go sit with
Comes at the table, right?
Yeah. So, and there's the opportunity to leave and go to another table too. So basically, I don't know that you're going to get anybody on board to do some work unless you have something very specific. And writing a story could be very specific. And by the way, Christine signed up to come tonight too.
Okay.
So,
Great.
I mean, this whole concept of starting a bioregional learning center, although that's a goal we've been taught, we haven't made a ton of progress in our own communities, Pat included, for the various reasons. And then we get into the weeds of, well, we know the system is going to crash, but other people aren't ready to accept that and move on yet. So they're still trying to fix it. And then we just get into the weeds and we're not necessarily making any progress. So what I'm asking you today is, how do you feel about my idea to kind of shift gears a little bit in how we're trying to move towards a learning center? We're trying to draw people in, not by meeting them and say, what do you need? Because that has proved, problematic, we found, but continuing to get the stories of examples hyper local that are doing restorative or community work or using alternative methods of financing, like ReVillage in Grayton seems to have a combination of BioFi and some county ag and open space grants. So they're kind of spanning old financing and new financing, and that's a story to hopefully open doors that we haven't been able to. By maybe sharing these stories, we would do better in sparking people's curiosity.
When we contact a group, the question is, we want to know more about what you're doing.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And well, we were successful in getting into the Laguna Foundation that way.
Yes, and Solar Punk Farms and ReVillage Green Valley. And so we have all these examples, but instead of keeping, I don't know, I feel like I can't just keep doing the same thing that isn't
Right.
really working. I was trying to think how to switch it up and still be doing something towards bioregionalism and still be doing hyper local immersions, now that I learned that word and what it means, which are a catalyst for the next steps of whatever you're doing. So I don't know that you're going to recruit people necessarily, but it's an opportunity to tell 30 plus other people about this concept of bioregionalism and why we want to find a way in to weave together what's already being done.
Do we go back? What's really struck me strongly, just thinking about this, was that large groups of people, relatively, lived in this area, this immediate bioregion, for 10,000 years, many thousand years before Western civilization even started. Where, the whole and lived here in a very sustainable way that was supportive of the environment and worked quite consciously in forming social systems in which everybody was supported, in which there were not wars between groups that were adjacent and close to each other. They lived, for the most part, peacefully, and they had ways of doing that together, connected to pro-social. They had their systems and their way of looking backwards and looking at the consequence of everything that they did. We've been not looking at consequence. We've been our individual push toward individualism has ended up with a lot of creativity, but with very little sense of responsibility and circle and tradition, and it's broken down our communities. We can go down that road, but it's very complicated to talk about.
And I
Yeah.
would say a lot of people have at least a vague idea that there were people living here before colonizers, and they were more in tune with being part of nature. And do you want to tell history? I mean, I know we have to connect everything to history in the future, or do you want to, in your limited capacity as one person trying to do something, tell some stories of what you feel is a group or a person going in the direction we need to be?
Pat?
Well, I've been stuck for quite a long time. It's a dead end for me here to work by myself on the watershed, which I think is primary because we've started with local, and but working alone doesn't work. And even though we're in a hub, I'm down here by myself. So, I've also stayed involved with Project Adapt, and I sent something out to you earlier about what's going on. When we're done, I'll send you, well, I might be able to do it now. What I've reached out, I finally got to a point where it took me such a long time. I put together some emails, and with the somewhat final form, I've edited it myself, of what I sent out earlier, the announcement to the teachers I know who run the transdisciplinary leadership program at Marin Academy, and to some environmental leaders of organizations, that I've been involved in. And rather than focus on environmental, what we're doing in Project Adapt, first of all, there's support here for me. I mean, there's other people I've been involved in for over 3 years that are also reaching out with this proposal. It involves getting civic, educational, religious, environmental, governmental, and indigenous people locally to honor and get together and plan the first of maybe many events, at least first of all in Marin, but eventually using the Bay Trail, or it goes around the Bay Area, as the place for which to have similar events, so that we can bring together people to identify that they live together in a bioregion, the San Francisco Bay Area. And to me, it may be off the trail of what we've been trying to do, but in a way, it's what Penny and Joe recommended early on during our last learning journey was to create an event here, do something in the library, do something where you can ask people to come to. I've never been able to do that. I just couldn't see myself putting something together. Well, this is kind of like an event focus. We have that we're asking people to come and help us plan, regardless of how many people join. We're going to go ahead and plan something, and keep inviting people to participate in it. That's what I'm doing. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's sort of similar to what you're talking about, Dina, about having some kind of project that people can invest their time in, and by working together on something, we start to develop an understanding and an agreement and a sharing of the ideas we're trying to project out there about bioregional living together. I think it's absolutely important that what Anna's talking about, that we eventually see that how people live together here and were able to survive and honor themselves and their land and the other living creatures. And I think when eventually, it's hard to talk about this to people if they're not in some way connected to it, that the people who lived here 10,000 years ago and till recently, had a certain kind of a spiritual outlook, understanding that, that's what we hopefully can generate again. But anyway, I don't want to go on. I just want to say that I think you're on the right track. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have this kind of dressing that we expected, but
Yeah,
And
and
I'm wondering about the bioregional definition that we've got, the Marin Sonoma. I understand it's like a smaller part. But it's like, if you look at Regenerate Cascadia, it's huge.
I know.
It's got a whole bunch of bioregions in it. And
It
one
took a
of
long time, though, to develop.
David is going to be doing Whidbey Island as a little bioregion, but it's connecting to the other bioregions along the Salish Sea. So I'm wondering, this is the only other thing I had on my mind for the agenda, is that the unconference that is being held by the Bay Area.
Yeah, on the 3rd, you mean?
Yeah.
On the 3rd, yeah.
Fradeska sent us that there's the unconference at Laney College next week, on May 3rd or whatever it is.
Yeah, May 3rd.
I feel like we should be present there.
Yeah.
Because that will be the larger, and Dan has this larger background and understanding. It may be that is our larger bioregional reality, and that we're inside that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to get there. But
I'm trying to put myself up to do that. What's good is that so far from Project Adapt, Lauren and now Mark Swiskin and maybe Molly, people have joined the Joe's design school. So we've got people involved in the designs in our design school, and some of them are going to be going on May 3rd to this conference.
Right.
We all got to make. I'm trying to see if I can hang out and go there. It's a whole day.
Yeah, Dina can't. So I'm wondering, and I am very reluctant to do that much driving.
Yeah.
At this point. And Dan, I'm wondering if there's any chance that you can go at least for part of the day.
There's a chance, but I have a morning obligation already on the 3rd that I have every month, the first Saturday of every month. And so I think for me, I see our hub as being a network of other smaller and bigger hubs in our microbioregion, or you could just say watershed. We have a few watersheds here just in Sonoma Marin. So I look at watersheds as the components of a bioregion. And I mean, you could look at Ecotopia, which was who was the author of that book? I was in Oregon when we read and had the author speak at the university up there. But Ecotopia goes all the way from the Bay Area all the way up into British Columbia, because so we can look at bioregions as very large, but also they're made up of these other smaller components. But in terms of the institutions, to get back to your historical thing, my sister, who's a restoration ecologist down in Riverside, and one of the presidents of one of the chapters of the California Native Plant Society, to me, all of us who are environmentalists, particularly those of us who are interested in the biology of the bioregion, are already part of a network. And so I see the design school as being a global organizer of all of what we're doing here in the bioregional level. So I'm involved in sort of 5 levels right now. One is my company, Noble Bioresources. The other one is the Compost Coalition of Sonoma County, which I adopted from Will Box. I'm still running it. We have our own projects that we're working on, particularly permitting streamlining, which we have our meeting tomorrow, and we've already created a white paper that we're now going statewide with, because the permit streamlining applies to every local bioregion in California. And then obviously I'm a former executive director of the Association of Compost Producers. And one of our more successful programs is a Healthy Soil Roundtable, where we're having roundtables with CDFA, CalRecycle, and then the soil hubs, which are part of the RDCs. And that was the soil hub thing that I just went to. And then there's the work that you guys are doing, I think, in your various groups. And then another area that I'm been engaged in for the last 10 years is the California Bioresources Alliance, which we're now creating a hub at UC Davis. So it's part of the UC system, and organics management is also part of UC A&R. So that's what I call vertical integration, from small scale to medium scale to mesoscale to macro scale. And then there's horizontal integration, which is what we're all talking about right here. Although you did bring in Yanis Varoufakis, and I'm a student of his. Yeah. Because I've been focused on circular economics, or now we're calling it regenerative economics. But how does that interface with the macroeconomics of the extractive economy? And you and I were part of that book club about democratic capitalism, right? And Varoufakis is very much in there. I read his recent book on techno-feudalism, and he claims that capitalism is on its way out, and now we have to deal with techno-feudalism. So there's a lot of macroeconomic concepts that are containing this regenerative movement. I don't think we need to form a new group. I think that this hub needs to be the hub of all the groups that are already there. And we just need to figure out, and I think Dina, your storytelling goes to this point. I was one of the founders of Environmental Business Journal back in the late 80s, and that journal is still going. It's now online. But I realized that the environmental industry that we've helped form in the early 70s is so passé. And in fact, all the regulations are getting in the way of us forming a regenerative economy. That's why we're doing the permit streamlining white paper for, within our local compost coalition, but we're spreading that out to all the compost coalitions. So there's these professional layers, whether you're farmers, whether you're composters, whether you're global warming activists. What was the group that you were talking about, Pat?
The Project Adapt, is that what you
Project Adapt. So adaptation is key. And one of the best ways to turn people on to adaptation is to get them out in the wild and understand our connections to our watersheds. And so I see the hub as being a global way of organizing all the work that's currently going on. It's not like we have to form a new group.
Yeah.
It's just that we have to become better at weaving. I like the weaving metaphor.
I thought of another metaphor. It's kind of, bioregions are kind of fluid in who they encompass at various times, just like your family. Sometimes you're only having dinner with your immediate family, and sometimes you're having it with the next level out, aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. Sometimes you have a family reunion. Well, a bioregional learning center or a full immersion is a family reunion.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way. And that's kind of the way we're dealing with the Healthy Soil Roundtables. And we got the concept of a roundtable from the water boards when we were forming the bioregion in the Bioresources Center. We call it an alliance. So we're doing the alliance with all the folks that touch bioresources statewide, including academia, including government, including businesses and technology. So these are all these reunions. I mean, In the Mountain Man days, they called them, what did they called them, when all the mountain men would get together in the West, what did they call it? Convergence. Yeah. And so I think that's what we can help organize. But I understand organizing events is challenging, Pat.
Right,
You got to have an organization to have
right.
organized events. And that's what we do in
Right.
ACP.
I just got a newsletter, the last newsletter the Planet Drum is going to send out.
Mm,
And our Marin Sonoma thing that I wrote up is in it.
mhm.
But it's the goodbye from Judy Goldhaft.
Mm,
And she's been there since the 1980s,
wow. Yeah.
at least.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, organisms and populations come and go, just like organizations come and go.
so the bioregional idea is not new. I mean,
No.
Joe says that it's been perking and bubbling and involving people. I'm just wondering, I think, Dina, you're right about the story. And I'm feeling a little overwhelmed at how to tap into that tonight. What is the story to bring that might catch people's interest? My impulse, I mean, I have this dual impulse in me that's kept me with this process. And one of it is my connection to the earth and the wish. I've felt horrified since I've been a child. I grew up in the largest lumber town in America, the biggest mill, smoke all the time. That's why I still cough. And in such beautiful country, in a good community, but it was a company-owned town. And I was feeling it even as a child. The trees, the land, what we've done. If you read what Sonoma County was like 200 years ago, what the Laguna area was like, it'll make you cry.
Mhm.
What we've done is so profoundly destructive. So
But
that's
now we're all working together to regenerate different portions of that, because we're not going to go
Right.
back to living in
we
wiki-ups
can't go back.
like our native
We're not going
ancestors
to go
did.
back to herds of elk and grizzly bear and
Yeah,
clouds of birds that blocked out the sun and all
right.
these wonderful plants. But we can go forward with an appreciation.
Mhm.
So there's that part. And then there's the community part, both of which are equally important for survival.
Mhm.
Because unless we begin to circle and our resilience, our possibility of even surviving the time ahead depends on how strong our local circles. And as Dina said, the family moving out, the circles that we're connected to and the circles that we're part of form, and their commitment to each other.
Yeah, so one of the things I brought to my Compost Coalition, and Leslie Lukash, who's the executive director of Zero Waste Sonoma, said, yeah, we're already doing this. And it was the 8 core design principles of Eleanor Ostrom for Common Pool Resource Management. So we have the knowledge. She's also published a great paper. She passed away in 2012, but
Right.
got the Nobel Prize for this work of how do we work together in Common Pool Resource Management. And you remember I checked in. In fact, I knew that Joe had already been part of that because we were part of a pro-social course, 4 or 5 years ago now. And that's where I first met Joe. But he's doing this other, global project with the design school, which I think is fantastic. And I think it's really smart to call it a school because it's beyond universities, but it includes, preschool through graduate school. you know, in terms of levels of knowledge and awareness. The question is how do we do all of that holistically for our kids, our grandkids, and future generations as well, all of us
And
on this.
where do we begin here? How do we
I
begin?
think we begin
Oh.
here by creating this, by letting the design school be a roundtable of all of these other groups. All we need is one member from each group who wants to do this weaving process.
Yeah,
Of all the groups.
And that's where we've been having trouble.
although, for
Because
example,
like we have met with some younger people that totally have great visions, like at Solar Punk Farms and Reed Village, Green
Mhm.
Valley. But they are just like treading water in what they're doing. And so they're just like, oh, that's great. I'm glad the bioregion's in the background. It's gonna have its turn. So we have to keep it alive till they have the capacity to physically join us. But in the meantime, are we up to the task of telling their stories and maybe like in blog format and sharing them to spark interest? That's what I'm asking today. Are we up to that task? Because
I don't know.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
offhand,
It's
just
a-
we came
it's
up
a- it's a good
with
switch. We
it
can
is,
try.
but I mean, look, Pat is already working on writing up Project Adapt and adapting what he's written. So that's a great story we could share. Dan, you just had an experience at the Soil Hub. Are you
Yeah.
up to writing a short blog post and letting people know how that is important and how that kind of outreach into industry that isn't quite ready to go away, but we can make it better, and how, you know, it's part of the RCDs and which is a quasi-agency. I mean, so there's a story there, and I
Mhm.
think there's a story of how we're reforming the Sebastopol Grange. And Anna, you are a good writer, and you've talked to so many people. You could tell with maybe one more phone interview, you could tell the story of what the Solar Punk guys are doing or something. Yeah, people can go look at their website, but a lot of people never heard of them yet, so they don't go look at their website. But can we share their story and hold a place for them to come to our big family reunion when we get there?
How do we share these stories?
Well, we're gonna have to probably make Beans happy and use some social media and a website and a blog. Which if you do a blog, it can go on the website, but we would have to make a website finally. You know,
And
like
we use some of the resources or leverage some of the resources of the design school by using the one elements or elements of the mining network.
I don't know. I don't know if that would be harder to figure out or easier.
I sense it would be easier in the sense that we were always wanting to connect to the global organization. And I know that different hubs are already publishing on there. So I think we should take advantage of that because it
Well,
automatically connects us to that.
one place to get the word out is on BioFi, Hilo. Hilo is already formed, they have formed the blog. It's people, every
Well, if we
week.
use
they get there.
BioFi, I'm happy to do that as our bioregional hub, communication hub, rather than forming a whole new
Because the
blog or
the
whatever.
Hilo Hub is their communication hub, and it's full of questions and conversations and ideas and.
But if you
Have you
write
been on
something,
BioFi? I haven't been myself, so, but
yeah,
I'm happy to.
Anna got something about the Sonoma Marin Hub on there. But I think if you write something, you use it more than one time. So
Right.
if we were to use Hilo or the Design School Mighty Networks as a place to have a website about us, we would also get a social media account to maybe Instagram or something, which is easy enough to do. And
Or LinkedIn. I
or
mean, I have
LinkedIn.
a couple on LinkedIn already, so.
That's true. And we would just need to
Well, we're
get,
going to,
whatever story is told, you send that story multiple places.
so the three of us are going to meet at my house very soon.
Mhm.
And so we'll maybe,
Maybe we can just
Because
architect that. Yeah,
we'll
paint
just
the
really
format.
get this down on the ground, and I'll do my best tonight, which is going to be a challenge. I woke up thinking about it at 4:30 this morning.
Well, our
Doesn't surprise me.
conversation spurred some more ideas that I'll share with you, Anna.
Right, okay. And
Pat?
I've got somebody who's just arrived. Kalia?
Kalia, hi. Nice to meet you
Hello.
all. I'm your neighbor. I'm in Oakland, California.
Oh, hi neighbor.
And it seems like I couldn't find any like in the list of hubs, there wasn't a hub for like the East Bay, and which was curious to me. Maybe I'll have to start one, but I figured I'd come in and say hello, and also extend an invitation. I'm working with other bioregionalists here in the Bay Area to organize a bioregional unconference on May 3rd.
Right, we've been
We were
talking.
talking about that.
Oh, you were talking
Awesome.
about it already? You're ahead of me. Okay, good. Yay!
Yeah, I was hoping to come down. I'm trying to find somebody to go with me because I don't drive it,
Yeah.
that far at this point. But
We have a couple ideas for you, Anna.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic to hear. I'm so glad to hear that some folks from Marin will
we want
want
to
to be there. So
We've got to try to get to the conference. It's exciting. We heard about it.
okay, cool. Great. Something's working then.
Yeah, we had an early connection with the Bay Delta Trust when we were forming our hubs. And so we have the capacity to think big and small and move and, not have everything set in stone. So you're certainly welcome to drop in with us.
Great.
Yeah,
I think Pat wants to talk.
if you could put your email address in the chat, I could put you in our mailing list if you'd like to do that.
And Pat, I think it's worth, sharing your project adapt story as something different that is going on and working very.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. As far as answering your question about, do we have the capacity or do we want to do what you are suggesting? Why don't we try it? I'll send you what I'd like to put out there, what I put out, these few emails I did, and tell me if there's a story there. Get back to me, make some suggestions. I'll be glad to put something together for that. And also, I'm going to think seriously about May 3rd, attending May 3rd. One of the things that I've had to come to terms with is my age and my inconsistent energy level. And so I'm trying to be realistic and accepting of it rather than just, cave in. So it'd be great to continue to look for, in a way, additional younger people to join us. That's the hardest thing to do, I guess. As we continue to function as you're suggesting, Dan, as a weaving center. So anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
My position was just replaced over the last 2 years with the Association of Compost Producers by someone who just turned 27. So she's old enough to be my granddaughter, but she grew up adjacent to a compost family down in Southern California. So she's really into it and now running that association. So I think we need to bring, the next generation is there, but there's a lot of issues. They're smaller than our generation, and and there's a whole lot of issues there
Yeah.
relative to that.
and I'm seeing that BioFi is a younger group.
I think BioFi sounds like a good aspect of our hub. And
Right.
whether we do it through there or whether we do the communication
I know
through
Matt
mining,
is local and
Wow.
on it, so he's connected.
right?
And we can perhaps down the road. I think that connection will be helpful. I think Samantha's local too. I think she's Marin.
Yeah, she's local, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Local.
Yeah, and
so,
Kalia, we were talking about how, what does the hub look like as far as we're all part of many other organizations, we're not part of others, but they're all working toward the same end, the design school and regenerating our local bioregions. For
Yeah.
example, my son and granddaughter and daughter-in-law, as well as my business partner, live in East Bay, one in El Sobrante and the other over in Orinda. So they haven't even talked about getting involved in this yet because their lives are so full already. But they're spiritually or socially or cognitively and emotionally connected to this work.
My
Because
kids. too.
yeah,
Yeah.
your kids too?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
We talked about maybe looking at changing the name of our hub, Marin Sonoma.
mhm.
So that's another ongoing, I think, thing to think about. And I was wondering how to name it in such a way that we also become a place for people like, how do you pronounce your name?
Kalia.
Kalia, who lives in Oakland now,
I mean,
until you find something about
there's
it.
this theory of group formation in the digital world that I work in mostly that sort of says start out with everybody interested in thing X and split as you need to when there's enough energy to sustain two groups. Like it felt like I was like, oh, it's just Marin and Sonoma, and then there's like no other Bay Area things. It might be more strategic to sort of say like this is like have a group that's the 9 counties that touch the bay. I get the Bay Area is bigger, there's like, depending on how you count it, but and then as there's enough momentum to have like there's a critical mass that is in 9 counties and there's like enough critical mass for Marin and Sonoma to meet on their own, like great. But I mean the challenge with the Bay Area is unlike any other metro region that I know of in its vast geography, and it's highly, it's got different climates, it's got different cultures, it's got different wealth, gap inequalities, it's got very different but at the same time we're here and we need to align around this big body of water that is in the middle of us.
I've been having the same issue with the compost coalitions that we're forming. I came from San Diego originally. In fact, that's the picture behind me is the mountains behind San Diego and where my office used to be. But San Diego was kind of an island, whereas the Bay Area is an archipelago, right? Around the bay. So there's always obviously North Bay, East Bay, South Bay, but then there's the peninsula, which is kind of unique unto itself, San Francisco.
yeah.
So, but at the same time, it's part of the whole, economy
No, it's
and bioregion.
the Marin Sonoma idea comes from looking at the bioregional structure of the indigenous people who lived here for so long. This region, and not all of Marin, it was the part of Marin that you're in, Pat, and coming north, was part of that Coast Miwok, Southern Pomo, who came together and worked together, even though they were different tribes, and they formed a region. Right now, the Grayton Rancheria is part of that. Dry Creek Rancheria is part of that. And they were very angry because this group from Lake County wants to build a casino right in my neighborhood, which will be a disaster. Because they're not part of this region.
Mhm.
So there's a long, deep identity of the bioregion. And respecting the bioregional identities. And we're plugged into that. What was here for, thousands and thousands of years. So I'd like to understand what that is. I think that's a smaller piece. And then there's a separation between, the Marin part of it and our part of it.
But I like Kalia's notion of starting big and then breaking into smaller, rather than starting with, I mean, you're starting with a historical perspective of the native populations, which is certainly a valid way to go too. It's just that most people don't identify with that. Most of us are non-place oriented. And one of the things, one of the
Part of
problems
what we're trying to do is become place oriented again.
absolutely, absolutely.
We have
And
to
that's one of the
connect.
challenges we have with,
I've grown up all over the Bay Area. I lived for
Yeah.
years in Berkeley, but
Yeah.
I need to connect where I am deeply, and it's different.
Mhm.
So
But yeah,
this will be something to talk about at the unconference. Whether
definitely.
we focus more in our small groups and then weave together.
Right.
Or that feels right to me, because we've been big and we tend to think big, and our whole education takes us out there.
Yeah.
Not beginning on the ground. We're not beginning with the immediate community that we're living in.
Yeah.
Most
of us are
if
highly
I'm in
mobile
trouble,
and immigrants too.
I'm in trouble, and
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah.
And it isn't just Dina. Oh, yes.
The Service Berry by Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hadn't
Is it
heard that
good?
one.
It's very small. I recommend it. A friend gave it to me and I finally started reading it, and it reminds me, I ran and got it because Dan mentioned circular economy.
Yeah.
And just in the first chapter, she touches on what if an economy was based on reciprocity and just gratitude. And she explains how that would work better, because we would share the abundance as opposed to hoarding it. And anyways, I like her, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to get another book of
We've
hers.
got about a minute left before 11:30. Do you want to kind of wind it up, or
Yeah.
where we go? And also, Kaela, I hope you enjoyed your few minutes here with us, and come back next time we get together. We need a-
Maybe. I mean, we can. I'll be at the unconference for sure. And like, one thing to talk about is like how to build momentum for that network in the Bay Area, and like strategically doing that, since you're like the one hub that I've seen. And the BioFi people are definitely in this region, some of them. And I mean, I'm bringing I do unconference design and facilitation professionally and have done it for 20 years. And I too have been like, I need to connect to my place. Okay, what skills do I have? I have this skill, and I usually use it for nerds doing technology. Let's use it for the bioregional people where I live, and help me connect into all the stuff going on here. So
Thank you
That's
for
cool.
doing that.
Thanks, Steve, again on the 3rd.
And thanks for
yeah.
coming
So
into this meeting.
thanks for welcoming me, and we'll
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope I see you soon. I hope I get there. I'm going to try.
I'm gonna
okay.
try to get there too.
Beautiful. Bye.
Okay, so I'll send out what I have to everybody, and we'll connect them.
Sounds good. And then I'll be seeing you two guys on Thursday.
Thursday,
And we'll share with you, Pat,
9
whatever
o'clock.
we
nine
come up,
thirty.
we'll
Mhm.
share with you.
Okay,
Okay,
Yeah,
Great.
and I'll look for your latest notes on Project Adapt whenever
Yeah.
you're ready. No hurry. I'm
no,
one
I'll
of
send it out today.
overwhelmed people.
yeah, and
send it-
I'm happy to
I
do
find my
notes too on
papers.
the
I have
various
to
groups
find my
I'm involved
papers
in.
first for lunch. All right, take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Okay.
Yeah.